Hello, and welcome to Saturday. I'm your host, Phoenix Electra, and it is Sewing Lesson Saturday. So, let's get stuck in. Last week, hold on, this isn't going to work. I can't, well, might as well just practice getting used to it. All right, trying out my new headphones today. So last week we started some smocking. I'll go over here. There. And I do want to carry on, but we don't need to do that all on camera. So let's get stuck in with the next section of the lesson. And let me give a quick shout out to thank you everybody who watches this on the YouTubes, on the Rumbles. Locals, nobody's paying attention to me yet. Free of Roofers, I forgot snackies. We'll have snackies tomorrow. Oh, I've got a mad cat. I'm getting glowered at. She's over there. Okay, so we'll practice some more smocking, but let's start reading the next section here. So we are carrying on with the American system of dressmaking lessons. We are still in lesson 1, and hopefully we can get to the drafting soon because I want to make some more clothes. All right. Few people realize how easily hem stitching can be done with any lock stitch sewing machine with the aid of blotting paper. Curved seams over the shoulders and around the hips can be managed quite as well as the straight seams. To do successful work, the blotting paper must be cut into strips 3/4 of an inch wide. I need to pull this off. Thought I was going to listen to music, but I'm not that talented yet, and it's a little distracting. But these noise-canceling headphones, I do need to practice, wearing them in my ears while I'm talking because they're intense. I know why everybody loves them because now I love them also. Should I practice just wearing them without having anything in the listening? Pardon me while I put my earphones back in here. All right, hold on while I go get cat snacks because Free of Roofers is very upset with me. All right, let me put on the technical difficulty screen real quick here. Let's see here. Nope, not an outro. Where is it? There it is. BR. Okay, we're back. I know, everybody got upset. I mixed up the order of things. I was late to my own show, had to reschedule it, and then I forgot the snackies. Okay. Ray Rivers was having none of it. She kept glowering at me. She's like, you told me that we were going to have snackies. You didn't let that other human give me snackies. And now you are trying to let me down. There's snackies. All right, that's it. Snackies have been had. Snackies have been had. Okay. Is everybody better now? Is everybody better now? Okay, can I have my hand back, Bug? We got it. We're not getting very far in the sewing lesson if I can't read. Okay. There we go. Cut into strips 3/4 of an inch wide with the same curve as the material. 4 of these strips are placed together on top of the others between the 2 edges of the material to be joined. For heavy linen or PK, number 70 crochet cotton is used on the sewing machine for hem stitching. For basting the blotting paper between the edges, stitch using the cotton thread. Make the stitch on the machine as large. Oh. Okay. And okay, we are sort of back. Loki got his tail stuck, dragged my computer. I pressed the wrong button and jumped the page too far. Okay. We are back. As possible, being careful the tension is not tight. The seams. Oh, right, I was going to practice reading with my earbuds in. This is going to be a skill unto itself. All right. In the words of Emily D. Baker, we are professionals here. We are professionals. Okay. Tension is not tight. The seams to be hem stitched are then stitched 3/8 of an inch from the edge of the material, as one would do for an ordinary seam. Afterward, take out all of the basting thread and carefully tear away the blotting paper. If each fold is torn separately, it comes away easily, leaving the machine stitching loose. Easily leaving the machine stitching loose. The raw edges on each side of the stitching are then turned back on the wrong or under side and stitched close to the edge with 1 row of fine machine stitching. The raw edges can be trimmed off close to the stitching, or they can be fastened down with a row of feather stitching or French knots as shown in figure 30. Oh, those are cute. Too bad we're not going to try. We should try this out, but I don't have a chain locking machine and blah, 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 blah. Fancy stitches made by hand are always popular and stylish. If they are used on silk or woolen goods, they should be worked with silk in color to match the material. A good effect can also be obtained by working the stitches in some contrasting color. For instance, navy blue, or black would look well when worked with white. The stitches can also be worked with mercerized cotton on garments of wash fabrics. For any of the following stitches, hem or turn over to the wrong side each edge of the material to be joined. Baste each piece firmly on the folds of the newspaper with a 1/2 inch space between the two. 2 folds of newspaper or wrapping paper are adaptable for this purpose. Figure 31 illustrates a sheaf stitch. Ooh. Thread or crewel needle number 6 with a long strand of well-twisted silk. Crochet silk or buttonhole twist is the most suitable. Take 1/8 of an inch stitch on the edge of one hem, then on the other edge directly across the paper. Work. Now I almost wish I was practicing this. This is very fascinating, but let's just get through the reading. Edge to the other as shown by needle number 1 in figure 31. For the second stitch, take another long thread and begin. Tie the end around the center of 4 strands of the horizontal stitches already made. Insert the needle around the next 4 threads and tie a knot on top without breaking the thread in the needle, and continue with the next 4 and so on until finished. See needle 2 on figure 31. The bastings are carefully drawn out and the work removed from the paper. Another pretty stitch suitable for joining seams is shown in figure 32 and known as herringbone stitch. These lessons today's being a funny one. This stitch is worked with the same kind of silk as the one previously spoken of. For this stitch, there are 3 separate strands of silk used instead of 2, which makes it a little stronger and more suitable for heavier materials than the sheaf stitch. When the material is basted to the paper, the needle is always slipped under the edge of the hem on the lower third, on the lower or left-hand side. Now take a stitch in the opposite hem, twisting the needle around the strand just made, and bring it back to the starting point. See needle number 1 in figure 32. Slip the stitch of the next strand and repeat. For now, take another long strand of silk for the understitch of the center bar stitching. See needle number 2 in figure 32. For the upper row, another strand of silk is taken to whip the center bar between each strand as represented by needle 3 in figure 32. Faggoting is another simple stitch that is often used for trimming garments. It is effective for joining 2 rows of lace or ribbon in yokes and sleeves. It is worked somewhat in the same way as feather stitching, with this difference. The needle is always inserted from the underside of each edge of the hem instead of on top, as in feather stitching, thus giving a double twist which makes it firmer. I'm going to have to go back and redo these things. They're so cute. But seams, I think we've got practices for... We'll do some sewing today, I think. Seams. There are several different methods of finishing seams in tailored suits which tend to further ornament or decorate in addition to any other trimming that may have been used. They may be classified as the single-stitched, double-stitched, broad seam stitched, welt seam, double-stitched welt, open welt, or tucked seam, bound open welt seam, slot seam, strap seam, imitation strap seam. This is so many words, but let's try something. Okay. Imitation strap seam, raw edged lapped seam, and cord seam. Always remember when making a coat suit that the same finish selected for the skirt should be carried out on the coat as well. The single stitch seam is obtained by first stitching an ordinary seam, then press open again with one row of stitching on the side seam. The double, okay, sorry, should we, okay, let's pretend that we know what we're doing. All right, well, take her phone home. Let's stitch a seam. Okay, we are winners and professionals around here. Okay. Oh, pardon me. I think it was like winter around here, and I was exhausted and confused and hardly knew what my name was. And it might be correct. Okay. And the light's bad, so you're probably not even going to be able to see this dark green. All right, let us sew a seam. Which seam? Let's go with a running back stitch because when I just get to the fun stuff. Okay. So we're going to stitch the seam, press it open, and stitch again with one row of stitching on one side of the seam. These are some of the most unprettiest stitches. But nobody gets to be perfect when and just using some white cotton on this green flannel. More back bug. Oh. He thinks there's snackies laying around on the floor. Don't get yourself stuck again. Oh, did you find extra snackies? Look at that. Oops, pardon me. Now Free is upset because she's like, where's my extra snackies? Silly kitties. Okay, one seam. So, okay, so it says the single stitch seam is obtained by first. Okay, so we're gonna press it open with our fingers. Oh, this looks like somebody like chewed the edges off. That was not very careful. Okay. Then press open and stitch again with one row of stitching on one side of the seam. You do both seams. Single stitched seam is obtained by first stitching in ordinary seam, And press open and stitch again with one row of stitching on one seam. Why would you do that instead of just a double? That was not very exciting. Because then the double stitch seam is what in my brain would make more sense, where you stitch down both sides. In the broad seam, stitched, the seams are cut wider so that after the double stitching is in, an additional stitching may be added on each side, one half inch from the center. Okay. The welt seam. The welt seam is obtained by cutting wide seam turnings, and after being stitched in the ordinary is pressed to one side. Then an ornamental row of stitching is placed from 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch from the seam. If the material is of heavy weight and the edge of the upper seam may be cut away up to this row of stitching to avoid too much. The double-stitched welt is made just like the welt, with the exception that there is another row of stitching on the side of the seam about 1/8 of an inch from the seam. The open welt or tucked seam is basted in a regular seam, both edges pressed to one side. The ornamental row of stitching is then put on from 1/4 to 1/2 inch from edge. The other edge is not stitched but is left free and therefore resembles a tuck. This should be pressed very flat. The bound open welt license again. How do I get back to buttonholes? Oh, there's drafting coming up soon. Oh, we're so close. Oh, tucks and shirrings. We're finally at the end of lesson 1. Is made by binding the raw edge of the seam with grosgrain ribbon, which may be purchased for this purpose at any department store. The seam is lapped well over the opposite piece and stitched as near as the cording of the ribbon as possible. The lapped seam is made by joining the seams as far as for an ordinary finish. It is done with fine thread or sewing silk and the seam pressed without being stitched. An understrip of the material is cut 1 4 inches wide and placed directly over the center of the seam at the back. This is stitched to the garment from the right side, 3/8 inch, 3/8 of an inch each side of the seam. Remove the basting, which will free the pressed edges. Raise them from the understrip and stitch each edge, then press. This is a double-stitched slot seam. Single stitch is obtained by leaving off the final stitching on the double-stitched slot seam. For the scrap seam, wide seam turnings are allowed and the seam is stitched and pressed. The strap is usually about 5/8 of an inch wide when finished, and the center is placed directly over the seam. The wide turnings underneath extend beyond the stitching of the strap so as to gradually decrease the thickness. Figure 41. Where the material is heavy, cut away the upper edge of the seam as described in the double-stitched welt. The strap may be on what is something computer. Strap may be on Straps may be on the length of the material, but far better results are obtained by making them on bias. A strap 5/8 of an inch in width, cut as many strips of cloth as will be required. Each one, each as will be required. One, each one, 1/4 inch is what? One, I don't understand what that means. Join them as described on the next page and press the seams open. But when basting the strips on the seams of the coat or jacket, avoid bringing any of these joinings in a permanent way. It would be preferable and denote better workmanship to waste a few inches and discard the pieces with the seam on it if necessary. An imitation strap seam is made by lapping the material as much as desired, then turning the edge on both right and wrong side, and stitching flat. See figure 42. It is used extensively on unlined coats and skirts. The raw edge lapped seam used solely for very heavy material which is not likely to fray. The raw edges are lapped 3/4 of an inch and the stitching directly on the edge. The cord seam is illustrated in figure 44. The seam's edges are both pressed to one side and an ornamental row of stitching added on the right side, far enough from the seam to form a raised edge, which will appear as corded. Bias bands and fold. Bias bands, folds, and ruffles are used so extensively in dressmaking that it is very desirable to know the best and quickest way of cutting and making them accurately. Spread the material of whatever the bands are to be made smooth upon a table, and mark 4 inches from the lower left-hand corner on the left selvage, and also mark 4 inches to the right, the left corner. Using a yardstick or ruler, draw a line, chalk or pencil from one mark to the other. From this line, mark the desired width of bias strips and draw a line through these marks. Continue marking the last line made each time until you have a sufficient number marked. See figure 45. Cut through the lines and join ends together neatly and accurately. Always join the right end of one piece to the left end of another piece. Make the seams diagonally, not vertically. Bias folds are used in many instances and for purposes are made of various ways. The milliner's fold is made by turning the top edge over 1/2 inch. The lower edge is then turned under a seam's width and is brought up within 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch of the top edge. This is decided by the size of the fold being made. When several folds are put on a garment, the lower ones are made by folding each through the center lengthwise. Bring the two raw edges under. Turn the raw edges in together toward the inside in a narrow seam and baste along close to the edge. The milliner's fold is put on at the top of the slip stitching on. When making a stitched milliner's fold, the stitching should come in center of the fold as shown in figure 47. Oh, so they're sewing their interesting. Oh, because they're just confused. Fascinated. We're making a stitched milliner's fold. Milliner's fold. The Stitching should come in the center of this fold as shown. Okay, that's where my mind got. To make straps for a coat, cut them about 1 1/4 inches wide on a bias. Fold lengthwise. Fold evenly lengthwise with the edges together. Right side out and overhand the two raw edges very closely with coarse, even stitches. Figure 48. See that the row of overhanding comes in the middle of the strap and press well on the overcast side. Over the seam and stitch the edge through both strap and coat. When making crepe folds, cut them straight across the goods if possible. This will show the crinkles running diagonally. When cut bias, when cut bias, the crinkles will run straight, and the effect is not so good. Silk folds are usually cut bias, and a homemade appliance by which they may be accurately and quickly made is shown in Figure 49. It kind of looks like a piece of paper or metal, like the modern bias makers that you can buy that I'm too lazy and don't have. Some straps twice the width of the desired fold, plus 1/4 inch. Stitch them together, making the seams at the selvages, and press the seams open. Cut a short strap of cardboard the width of the complete. Wrap around it 2 or 3 times a piece of thin card. A postal card answers admirably, and paste the edges down. Lay it under a book or iron until the paste is dry. I wonder if I could use the index card. Again, I'm trying to skip the short waist and we're not there yet. Using Then remove the piece of thick card that is inside and place of it and in place of it run the silk, folded with raw edges meeting in the center. Press with a warm iron over a damp cloth, pushing the card along, forming and pressing the fold at the same time. All right, let's. I'm confused for today. So, we're hanging out with me. A good time. Join us again tomorrow, where we'll do more sewing. And until next time. Bye.